Hello and welcome to the Simply Smart Business Podcast. I'm your host, Nicki and I'm absolutely delighted to have Jessica Scott from Dragonfly Marketing, Promotions, and Consulting here with us today. She's a dynamic COO and CMO with a proven track record of crafting strategies that elevate brands, ignite market engagement, and deliver measurable results. All huge, right? And today we're going to be talking about all sorts of amazing things with Jessica. We're going to talk about overcoming the imposter syndrome feeling that we all get, leading with empathy, and being a mom and an entrepreneur, and being effective and successful doing both, which it's one of my favorite topics. So hello and welcome, Jessica.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for being here. All right, I always like to start with a little story time. So take us back a little bit and talk to us about how your journey started, how you ended up starting Dragonfly, and where you've gone in the middle.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if there's enough time for that whole story, but I'll give you as quick of a little recap as
Highlights.
I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
In college, I was actually a psychology major, very much interested in working with children and or like psychopaths, kind of like that whole Jodie Foster Silence of the Lambs thing. The human mind absolutely intrigues me. And so that was really where I wanted to go. And unfortunately, when I was a sophomore, about a junior actually in college, I had a professor tell me, yeah, this is really not a field that you want to go into because it's so overpopulated. And he just kind of started going on and on about all the negatives of the field. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to stay in school long enough to get a PhD. That was not in my life at that time. I was not interested in that. And so it really kind of made me reconsider things. And I was working in the marketplace as a waitress at the time. And the restaurant that I worked at did a lot of external marketing from an internal space. So they would use the servers and stuff to go out into the community and really touch people. And so I'd started doing that and really enjoyed it. And then very much started realizing my skill set was in talking to people, getting people to come in and just building relationships with people. And I let that kind of layer into what I was doing. So it's a little bit of psychology. Obviously, marketing and psychology in my mind very much align. And so I started really building into psychology or into marketing at that time. And eventually, after a few years, I actually shifted everything that I was doing from psychology and really focusing on marketing. And that same restaurant was looking for a marketing director, and it was a big chain, a big franchise organization. And so I applied for it as requested and ended up not getting that role, but it just really made me realize that was exactly the area that I wanted to go. So I started working in other organizations in marketing and very quickly found myself climbing to a place of which there was no more room for growth. And I've never been one to stop the growth. Even though I knew I didn't want to get a PhD back in college, I still wanted to continue to learn and grow. Sure. And so I would get to this place in organizations and just not have anywhere else to go. And I kept finding myself stuck. And so that had happened to me. I was working at the newspaper in my city, and I had a great boss and a great mentor, but I'd gotten to a place where there was just no room for me unless people started retiring. And so I went to work with an affiliate partner that we had worked with from that space, and they were in promotional products and marketing. And so I went to start working for them. Unfortunately, he was in his 70s at the time, the gentleman that owned that business, and was really looking to kind of get out of the business. And social media, this is going to date me a little bit, was not really a thing. It was just beginning to be a thing, I should say, at this point. I started my business in 2008, so this would have been about 2006-ish. So, Facebook was really just beginning, MySpace days, and everybody was kind of transitioning. Yeah. So I kept telling him, like, we've got to do this. Like, we've got to get on this front. We got to start talking on social media about this. And he was like, I am not interested in any of that. At 70, he was ready to retire, and I was in growth mode. And so he and I had a sit down conversation. He agreed that he would be fine if I went off on my own and if I wanted to do that. And fortunately for me, some of the networking and things that I had been doing up until that point landed me a very, very large client, a multi-state blood institute. And I had worked very hard on this presentation and landed this massive job. And I know, I was so excited, and it landed in my plate right as him and I are having this conversation.
Of course.
And so Yeah. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I can run this through his business, but then I'm obviously going to make significantly less, blah, 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 all of those things. Or I could try to run with it on my own. And so I brought it to him and he said, this is your client. You worked for it. I didn't give it to you. You just do whatever you want. And I literally went out the very next day, happened to be October 1st, 2008, and filled out all my paperwork and got an LLC set up with the state. And that started my business. That one order started this business in October of
Amazing.
2008. And then fast forward about 25 days, the entire economy fell out and I was a brand new business owner. So you very quickly learn how to make it work. And that's what I did. And I grinded really hard. I typically had a couple of jobs at a time trying to get that started and get it moving. And here we are today, like, I don't know, 16, 17 years later. It is still in business. It has shifted. It has changed. It has grown. I've actually also gone into the marketplace and worked in corporate America a little bit from here and there just to get some different experience. And I keep finding myself coming back to it. So here I am in this current season of life, fully living in the place of being a full-blown entrepreneur, working for myself. And I do consulting for myself, but also for other consulting firms. Just really loving it and learning a lot of new things. And I'm currently looking at a new shift and what that looks like for the next upcoming, season of life. Am I going to stick in kind of the same exact area or am I going to grow from that? And there's fun things coming, but yeah, it's kind of shifted along those lines through the years. And here I am. So I've gotten a little bit of experience or a lot of experience from a marketing perspective, about 25 years, but then operationally, I also love just overall business operations as well. And so I've really found myself diving into that. I did it at the beginning of my career, took a little break from it, and now I'm diving back into the operational side as well and finding a lot of enjoyment and learning coming from that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So would you categorize yourself in that sort of fractional CMO place then?
Exactly. Yes. And definitely fractional CMO. And I also am currently doing fractional integrator work, which is a little bit different. It's more of that operational side. I love both pieces. But yeah, I don't know that I'll ever go full time back to an org again, but I love the CMO work. I love strategy and budgeting and building out plans. And so, and managing all of the pieces within a marketing funnel and team. So I'll continue working from a CMO perspective for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a brilliant way to grow too. I'm very similar in that I always love to learn and grow. And that's how you stay agile and you stay fresh and relevant, especially in a space that changes on a daily basis.
Right. And I think that is, I think, been one of my frustrations in going into the marketplace. If you work in corporate America, a lot of times you'll get into situations where people assume or think that they can hire one person for marketing and that person can do it all. And the thing is marketing is so different today than it was 25 years ago, with the internet and all of these new pieces. 25 years ago, somebody probably could run a fairly comprehensive marketing strategy alone. Today, it's just not possible. There's just too many avenues. There's too many things. And I think I do consider myself a generalist in the sense that I have a pretty broad knowledge of all marketing. I know how to read analytics. I understand strategy. But if I am going to deep dive into social media, I am not the one that's going to be posting for you and putting together the details of that strategy, right? You really need somebody who understands that, especially today with the trends and the virals and algorithms and everything that's going on. And so I think for me too, that's why the fractional space works, because it helps me stay in a lane that fits what I want to do versus getting stuck in the situation and the grind of working 12 to 16-hour days and always feeling like you're behind the curveball because somebody expects you to do everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. So you mentioned that at the start of your journey, you just went for it. And I hear that from a lot of entrepreneurs. There's a moment, or often they're laid off, or there's just that something that happens and it's a make or break moment. It's either you go for the business or you go back to corporate America and find something, right? So there was probably a little bit of imposter syndrome going on there. So talk to me a little bit about that and how you overcame that.
Yeah. I would actually not even say as much back in the beginning. So in the beginning, I feel like I was very young. I was in my earlier 20s. I was probably in my late 20s, I guess. But either way, I was really young and just very optimistic and not as jaded from life yet, So I think I really was like, I can do this and I'm not even worried about it. And I just did it. But fast forward to, I've gone back in the marketplace. I've come back out. I've learned a lot. I've put a lot of it back into my business. But then as I've transitioned to this fractional space of where I'm not just focused on promotional products and that piece, I'm more focused on that fractional CMO work, the fractional integrator work. Fast forward to, I was in the marketplace and I was actually pregnant with my second child, January of 2024. We were due for delivery in March. And I was working as a COO for an organization as well as an integrator. And so I was their integrator and I was the COO. I had actually just been given that promotion a few months before that. So I was promoted, I believe, in like September to COO. And then fast forward to January, my husband and I bought our dream house. We were super excited. We had our second child on the way, and we closed on our home on a Friday. And I went into work on Monday, was told I needed to lay some people off, assured that I was going to have a job in the aftermath of that because, quote unquote, he couldn't run the business without me. And then on Wednesday, after I laid off most of the staff, I was laid off as well. And to say my world went into a tailspin, I think would be an understatement. My husband had been a stay-at-home dad for 6 years. We had a 5-year-old at home and a baby on the way. And not only was I laid off, but then he shut the door. So I was no longer eligible for COBRA insurance. I was not eligible for anything. And by the way, we had just bought our dream home and sunk our savings into it, thinking it was our forever home and it was a good investment. So we had very little money in the bank. We had a baby on the way. We had no insurance. My husband did not have a job and hadn't been in the workplace in a long time.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, like, what are we going to do here? You know, I happen to be a very strong faith in this season of my life. And so I knew that we would get through the challenges. And I knew that there was something better on the other side of this. But in those moments, to say that my mind was spiraling would probably be an understatement. Needless to say, we ended up having my daughter early. My blood pressure spiked and that didn't go as well as we wanted, but she's here and she's healthy. And very quickly, I was kind of taken back because one person that I'd worked with at that previous place as a vendor, I'd reached out to him. So I got laid off on a Wednesday, but I also should say I stayed with this gentleman and continued to work and hand things over to him out of good faith and for a couple of days. And during that time, I also was emailing a lot of the business partners and people that I work with and just saying, hey guys, like the business is closing down. I'm leaving and no longer have a job. And I had somebody very quickly reach back out and said, hey, I happen to know somebody that runs this business. Would you be interested in talking to them? And of course, yes, I will talk to whomever. When I got introduced to Emerscale, which is one of the consulting firms that I currently work with, and he almost immediately hired me. I mean, we went through the process, but he wasn't technically looking to hire somebody and met me. And it was kind of like one of those perfect fit situations where it just made sense. And it was almost in my mind, like a way of God saying like, you're going to be okay. I need you to see like there is a path forward here. Yeah. And so I did. I went to work for him almost immediately, but also knowing he knew I was about to have a baby. I was going to do maternity leave. So it was a very slow go. And it took me probably about 6 to 8 months to just kind of recover from all of that. And here we are now, a little over a year after the fact. And I would say probably in January of this year, I started saying, okay, I feel like I'm coming out of this kind of fog of life that I've been in. But with that said, it's really made me reevaluate everything. And coming into this space, working into the consulting world in the manner in which I am now is far different than the way it was before. And so I did walk in with some imposter syndrome, and I do work in situations that can make you feel insecure. So I do work with very large organizations, CEOs that are running, 20, 50, $80 million companies, companies that are massive franchise organizations that are looking to sell or whatnot. So we're talking people that have been in business for a very long time, business owners that have just dealt with a lot of things. And I'm working side by side with them at this point, coaching them how to streamline processes, how to scale and grow even further. And so it's really easy to start doubting yourself in those moments, and especially like I look around and I'm like, oh, I've got like my baby and my 6-year-old and a family and all of these things happening and trying to balance it all and make it make sense and also present as a professional. Because I never want anybody to think that, oh, because I'm a mom with babies and I work from home, that I'm not this professional that I present myself as. And so many times I've had conversations with Dave, who's a mentor to me, and just saying, listen, I'm really struggling with imposter syndrome. Like, how am I going to talk to him about this? And he's like, what are you talking about? You've done this a million times. Like, get in there, like, put your chin up and get it done. And it's like, oh, just a reminder, like, you have to continually remind yourself, like, I was made for this. I wouldn't be in this situation if it wasn't made for me. And you just have to learn how to rise above. But the imposter syndrome is definitely real, for sure. And I work very heavily in home services and home building and construction, which is a heavily male dominated field. And a lot of those gentlemen are coming around, but there's still a lot of fear-based leadership happening within that type of organization. And so trying to gain respect and understanding and trust from them can be a challenge at times, which then once again takes you back to, am I good enough for this? Am I made for this? But every time I end up with a happy client, I am reminded that this is what I was meant to do. And so I just keep pressing forward and learning and trying to rise above those feelings. But they're there. They're there.
It's something you have to push against. I mean, I have a very similar story where in my 20s, I had a lot of experiences where clients were asking me, "How old are you?" And I'm like, "Is this appropriate? What's going on here?" And then later on, becoming a mother and being more established, and nobody asks me that anymore. But then you have those questions of, okay, I've got a screaming baby in the background, and I have to be on this conference call, and you just have to get it done. I was just talking with someone the other day and say, I'm in a ways thankful for COVID because I feel like it normalized the playing field and everybody had their kids at home and was distracted with work. So I feel like it really helped balance things for people to understand that, yes, you can have a family and you can work as well and get some things done.
Absolutely. I mean, COVID changed the game for people. And I know a lot of people look at that time as, just such a really negative and dark time. And I would say my family thrived during COVID in the sense of, like, I had actually just had my first child when COVID had happened, gone through some corporate hoopla at that organization in which I was promised a whole bunch of things if I came back from maternity leave. And then I came back from maternity leave and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're not going to do any of that. And I was like, what? Like, what are we talking about? And so I just remember thinking through that time, and I went home to my husband thinking, like, I'm going to have to find something else because this is not going to work for us now in this season of life.
It's what not is that aligned with you anymore?
Yeah. And then COVID hit and I got to go home anyway. And I was like, I'm going to keep this job because I was essential personnel. It was in the home building world. So we were all considered essential, even us marketing folks.
Interesting.
Ridiculous, if you ask me. There's so many people that are not essential, but I was essential as a marketing person.
Yeah.
Homes that made no sense to me. But it's true. I had a job, so I was not complaining at the time, but it allowed me to come home and be with my family and work and still be a mother and a provider at the same time. And then, like you said, it changed other people's perceptions of what that meant,
did.
Right? Because I haven't heard anything negative since COVID about people that work from home with their kids and stuff like that. Not as much. I remember at my last org, the wife of the man who owned the organization at one point was like, I can't believe, like, I was on a call with somebody and their kid was in the background. And I was thinking to myself, like, really? Like, you've been a stay-at-home mom your whole life. Why does that bother you? Like, it's not unprofessional anymore. I will say, you're not going to get on a professional meeting with me today and see my kids most of the time, but my teammates, the people that I work with very often, my kids will sit. Sometimes my daughter is sitting in my lap when I'm working. Why? That's what I need to do to get things done. Absolutely. But we've figured it out. And my husband luckily is still at home. So now we're all together at home while I work, and I can be a support. If my husband needs something or my kids need me to kiss their boo-boo or whatever it is, I can be here. And to be honest, I don't think I'll ever go back any other way, because I used to even say before I had kids, I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to be a work-at-home mom. And then I got away from that because it's really easy to get caught up in corporate America. And I find myself this year coming back and rethinking through that, because I used to say that all the time and then I never lived it until now, truly being able to live that work-at-home lifestyle with my kids and my husband here is extremely beneficial to our family, for sure.
Absolutely. That's incredible. And I love hearing that, because I think that I'm very passionate about the same exact thing. I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom myself. I knew I wanted to get out there and do something. And then it just so happened I started my business, and I thought I want to stick with this. This is also my baby. Like, I don't want to give this up. And I had every intention of sending my son to daycare, and I was able to make it work he stayed at home with me for the first 3 years. And I cannot tell you the number of conference calls I was on that I was like, I'm here, but I'm gonna shut off my camera. I have to nurse my son, or, he just had a blowout. I'm still here. I'm still talking. And I would talk
Yeah.
while I was changing a diaper. Like, we just make it work, right?
Work. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I hope that all of my clients, I remember when my daughter was a little bit younger and I was kind of new to some of these client work, so what I'm currently working with and the client load that I'm currently working with. And I can remember I have a group of men because once again, I'm in home services and home building.
Mm.
So I'm leading this virtual meeting for their leadership team, and it's me and four guys on the call. And my baby was losing her mind. And I also work a lot on East Coast time, and I'm in the Colorado area, so Mountain Standard Time, 2 hours ahead. So where they think they're meeting at 8 o'clock their time, it's 6 a.m. my time. And my
Yeah.
baby is like, "What are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be right here feeding me, screaming." And I just remember saying, I'm sorry, guys. This is one of those times where I'm just gonna have to turn off my camera and take her and feed her. And it was like things shifted right then. Like they almost were like, she's human. It was like, okay. So I turned off my camera. We continued with that meeting. It was still extremely successful and productive. And I'm still working with them 8 months later.
Yeah.
So clearly I'm effective still, but I just remember thinking, and that imposter syndrome snuck in there. I was like, they're going to fire me because who wants some woman with a crying baby on the call trying to do things? But that's not what happened at all. And they were very understanding. And so I do love the new look and the new ideas that people have in relation to this. And I think it's becoming more conducive to moms. And I mean, I think it's been such a needed thing, right? Because I feel like over the years, people, especially in some of the industries that I've been in, like they don't want to mess with hiring women because we go out for maternity leave, we cost them more money, we do this, we do that, we're emotional creatures, we're whatever, whatever it is. Like, but I feel like in a lot of industries and a lot of ways that mindset is shifting and people are seeing the value. I mean, at the end of the day, we're moms. Like, think about all the roles and hats that we play and we manage. And some of us do it really well, some of us not well, some days not as well as others.
That's okay. I love rocking a good hot mess express day.
We all have our days.
It happens.
But I truly believe, like I tell people all the time, like when I'm talking to people operationally about like how to hire, right person, right seat, I'm like, listen, depending on your role, like I would look for a mom that's trying to enter the workplace. Why? Because she can multitask. Like you need somebody who can take notes and learn new things and do all sorts of things. Look for moms, servers, like people that are just like constantly going and going and going, So I think people are starting to understand that a little bit. We're
I think
way
so
more
too.
valuable than we've been given credit for over all these years.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see the idea of the traditional 9 to 5, or the, sit at your desk, take conference calls all day is kind of expiring because people see it's not effective anymore. And that having a culture in place that aligns with working families is the way to go, because everyone's happier and the work still gets done.
The work still gets done. And I think really like, and this is something I've noticed not only with myself, but within orgs, whenever I step in, it's like if you really are an in-person organization, you're looking at productivity across your entire org.
Yeah.
Honestly, the people that are in that office are really probably only super productive 3 to 4 hours during the
yeah.
So
Easily.
the rest of the time you're paying them to be there to chit chat with their neighbors, to probably put out fires that are unnecessary right then at that time, and to not focus on anything at all. Sometimes they're straight up doing other things, not work at all. So why, when you can have somebody super productive for 3 to 4 hours and they can live their life and you're getting far more done, it's a win-win.
That was my personal biggest win. The thing I'm most proud of to this day is when I shifted to stay home with my son. I was working 40 to 60 hours a week prior to giving birth. I don't know what I was doing in that time. And then after I had him, I shifted to about a 20, 25-hour work week, and I've kept it. And that first year I doubled my revenue. And I was just amazed that that was possible, but it is. And it's because you just get laser focused and you worry about the right things and the things that are the most productive.
Exactly. My husband, before I was laid off, and I can remember so many times, like him and my 5-year-old, like he would always tell me like that that company is not worth the time that you're there. Like, why are you there 12 hours? You're leaving before we wake up. You're coming home at night. It's dark. Like, you're pregnant. You're working so hard for somebody else's business. I used to tell them, oh, it'll work out. Like, I'm going to get this promotion, or I'm going to get this, or I'm going to get to do this for them. And it was always something else that I was trying to get to, it was like, oh, and he's like, why? My husband always used to say, why not do this for yourself? Like, why are you killing yourself for another company? And I was like, I'm not. Fast forward to, and then I really thought, like, this gentleman that owned this company, like, no matter what, like, he would always just take care of me. But then in the end, he truly showed me, like, at the end of it, and I can't expect anything else. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. At the end of the day, he was going to take care of his family too. And in those moments, unfortunately, he'd made some really financially poor choices. And his option was to close the doors. Like, and there was no helping me make it right. There was no helping anybody. It was, he had to do what he had to do. And it really put me in a place of, wow, okay, now I need to really think through this. My husband was right. And I spent all of those hours and time away from my family focused on somebody else's business. And now I'm sitting here with nothing, and my family has nothing. And I have no idea what I'm going to do to get past this. And if this year has taught me anything else, it's that I will never put myself in that situation again where I'm fully dependent on one thing or one person or one organization to help me take care of my family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a gamble to even be in corporate life, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, the number of my colleagues and friends that I know that have been laid off in the past couple of years, it's crazy. Even if they weren't the first one in, they're still one of the first ones out. So it's very scary. So I've always thought that being diverse and having, multiple different, what is the saying? Different irons in the pot, or different
fires in the
different
pot,
streams of
different irons in the fire.
Irons in the fire. Thank you. But different streams of income is the smartest way to go, because then you're covered. You're not relying on that just one source. Let's shift a little bit now to, because I want to get to this part. I think this is going to be really fascinating. Leading with empathy. I think this plays into also like female leadership, because we're just naturally empathetic creatures a lot of the time. Tell me a little bit about what you are passionate about when it comes to leading with empathy.
My goodness. Like, this is definitely a topic I could probably talk for hours on. I will say that for me, I think the realization, or at least it started being kind of implanted in me in my early 20s. I was running health clubs from an operations perspective, very large health clubs. And my boss, I was the director of operations, and my boss was definitely a mentor to me. And I was super young, but I've always been a go-getter. I've always been a hustler. And so I'd get into these roles and people would be like, she's hungry to do something. Let's give her more, And so I was very young, running three $10 million health club facilities. But I did have a mentor, and she was amazing. And I remember one time she told me, listen, you're never going to get people to listen to you if you don't slow down and listen to them. Like, people say you come off as like bossy, or I was not connecting with people. They felt like I was just there to tell them what to do and like move on. And I was like, they don't know my heart at all. That's not at all what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, I get that, but you have to understand what that means. And I didn't. It took me a long time, because at that time I didn't even realize what empathy was, or understand what it meant to even be empathetic. However, I will say that dating all the way back to even birth, and as a little child, I always had these big emotions, and my parents didn't know how to deal with it either. So they would always just tell people, oh, don't worry. They would say, she's just got a sensitive heart. That's what they taught me to tell people, because we could walk into a room and all of a sudden I would just start crying and nobody would know why. It was because I was just absorbing all this energy from people. And I had no idea what that meant, but that's being empathetic. So for those listeners out there listening, if you struggle with this and have no idea what it is, it's just, you're an empathetic person. So read into it, look at what that means.
Empath here, so I know that well.
So it was such a struggle. And I mean, I can honestly say I was 35 years old when I figured out what being an empath meant. One of my girlfriends and I was actually talking about we were wanting to move to Colorado. I was talking about, do I close my business down? Do I look for a job? What's this direction look like? And her and I were talking, and I said something, and she goes, well, you're just an empath. And I was like, what does that mean? And she said, well, it means that, like, you feel others' emotions. Like you can walk into a room and read the room, you sense things from people. And I was like, that's exactly what it is. Like, that's it. Like, where did you learn about this? And so I started digging in and understanding what that meant. And honestly, it was a full blown game changer for me just to understand myself for the first time in my entire life. And to understand that this thing that I thought was a curse that I'd been dealing with my whole life because I didn't know how to manage the empathy. I always thought, like I said, I thought it was a curse. I would tell people it was my biggest flaw. And now I would say it's actually one of my greatest attributes. But it took me understanding that first. And so once I got to that place of understanding, I feel like now I'm in this space of understanding. And I can walk into a room and I can almost instantly tell you who's hurting in that room very quickly. Like I'm just very intuitive from that perspective. But it also helps me truly relate to people in the sense of like, if somebody isn't fully in, I can sense that. And it allows me to kind of start asking the right questions, building the right rapport, talking in a way that that person can receive me. And so then moving that into leadership, I had worked in 2018. I should probably be careful. I don't want to pinpoint any specific place, but I worked at a location that honestly was extremely toxic. It was very, very, very toxic. And I was very grateful to be there for several reasons. But at the same time, the culture within that organization was just not good at all. And I stuck it out for quite a while because I always have something to prove to myself. And so I did. I learned I would walk into rooms where groups of women would be talking about me and they wouldn't quit. They would see me walk in and I was like, is this real life right now?
Yeah.
High school? Because I swear I'm in my 40s at this point. What is happening? And so I was so miserable and I worked there for quite a few years and I left there and thought I'll never again be in that situation. And so I feel like since leaving there, I've been very much a champion for empathetic leadership and the fact that I truly believe that you get more out of your teams if you can truly understand who they are as individuals, what they're dealing with outside of life. Like you don't have to be best friends with them, but at the end of the day, we're all humans. And I always say we're all humans looking for human connection. And we want people to understand us and we want people to know us and to see us and to value what's happening in our lives. And we spend so much of our time at work. And if you're going into a corporate world and like me, you were spending 10 to 12 hours a day there, it's so important that you're happy when you're there. And for me, it's always important that I think people understand who I am, because if you don't understand the people that you're working with, it's really hard to be effective. And so learning how to truly understand where your employees are and help facilitate growth from that place with them because everybody's in a different place, and give them what they need individually. And it doesn't take a lot of work. Sometimes it literally just takes listening to the people in front of you and letting them know that you care. I mean, I can tell you that I've gotten to a place now where like I even had to unfortunately let a couple people go in a previous role. And it was more of like a empathetic conversation. Like, hey, you know why I have to let you go. Please understand that like, there's other things that can happen from this and you can do this, this, and this. I try to always come from a place of understanding with others and try to connect with them in a way that makes people feel heard. You're going to get more out of people if they feel respected and heard from you. And so I've worked for so many people that are fear-based leaders and I don't know, it causes resentment. It causes that whole silent quitting thing that became a pretty hot topic for a while. It causes all sorts of issues, breakdown in team dynamics, things like that. So I just truly believe that if you can lead from a true empathetic place, and I know there's people out there that are like, I'm just not an empathetic person, and that's okay. But learning how to lead with empathy is different than being a full-blown empath. You can lead people and let them know that you still care about them, but that the job still needs to get done. And I think my team members will all tell you, like, I'm probably one of the most empathetic people you'll ever meet. And I will be your best friend, your biggest cheerleader, but I'm going to hold you accountable. And if you're not going to be accountable, then I'm still going to have to let you go. Yeah. But we'll still be friends when you're gone,
Both things can be true. Yeah. And I think too, it's about asking the question, like, how are you really? Or I sense some things going on here. Do you want to fill me in or do you want to handle that privately? And I think there's a lot about just asking that question and then, like you said, listening actively and respecting boundaries, of course, and all of that. But there's no need for the high school drama. I can't believe you dealt with that. That's
So crazy.
ridiculous.
In my 40s too. It was just so silly. But but here's the thing is like I can look back on all these negative things that have happened, but truly is they've taught me so many things throughout my career that I'm like, I would go through it again just so that I could get some more lessons out of that, because
Yeah,
nobody wants to be in an uncomfortable workspace. And I
sure.
always try to like one of my very favorite things to do is helping people find like their best versions of themselves within their
Mm,
work. Like I love that part of leadership. I love partnering with a leadership person or team and saying like, where do you thrive and how do we get you to truly live in that space and let go of
yeah,
all these other things that are not in your genius, that are not in your wheelhouse, so that
yeah,
you can like truly live a happy life and fulfill that bigger purpose that you want to fulfill. And so I don't think I would even be to that place of understanding had I not gone through all of these kind of little things. I mean, it's like
absolutely.
being at the gyms, like I actually left because somebody threatened to take my life because he didn't like me
Oh my
telling him he
gosh.
needed to not curse on the gym floor and he needed to wear a uniform. And so he decided to tell me he was going to bash my face in with a brick. I'm like these are the things that I've dealt with. And I'm like, okay, I mean, great. And when they decided not to fire him, I was like, listen, yes, yeah, you
Wow,
know,
that is
um,
wild.
so, we learn, we live and learn. And I knew at that moment, if anything was crazy to happen, there was a lot of people there that would hopefully have stepped in. But
Sure.
regardless, I've learned a lot over my career. And I've learned that leading with empathy builds a very trusting, strong team.
Mm,
I know like my last team that I worked with before the door shut, I think anybody on that team would tell you they could come to me with anything. I helped most of them find jobs after the fact. I truly try to love the people that I'm with as much as I
yeah,
can in whatever way it is that they need me to do. I'm not going to cross boundaries with you.
sure.
But if you need my support or you want my support, I want to be that for
Hmm.
whomever I'm working with. Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful lesson, especially even in teams and also from an entrepreneur, customer, client standpoint too, like actually treating people like people as opposed to numbers or dollar
Mhm.
signs or whatever it is. Taking that extra time and really asking and listening and caring.
Yeah, I would say I think most of the clients that I've worked with would tell you I probably care way more than they would ever expect most people to care about
Sure.
things. I get really wrapped up and really into
Yeah.
things and I love really hard and that's just who I am, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always want people to feel supported. I think back to all the
Hmm.
times in which I didn't feel supported or I felt lost or confused or scared or whatever. And what can I do to remedy that in advance for the people on my team?
Hmm.
Because I don't ever want them to feel that way. And if they are feeling that way, I want them to know that they can always come to me and we will address it and try to
Hmm.
fix and resolve whatever the struggle is that we're dealing with right then.
Amazing. I love that so much. Well, this has been such an insightful conversation, Jessica. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your wisdom with us. What is the best way for listeners to connect with you?
Ooh, great question. I would say LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn is my best place. I've got a website kind of rebuild right now happening and some other things, but they can always email me or reach out on LinkedIn is an easy way to do that. And I guess I should know my handle, but I can get it to you.
Okay, I'll include it in the show notes.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it'll be included. The link will be in the show notes so you can grab Jessica's contact information there and
Wonderful.
connect with her on LinkedIn. Do you have any final words of wisdom or encouragement for our listeners?
Oh my gosh. For all you moms out there just trying to figure out what you're going to do next, I just say, like, don't let the imposter syndrome get you. You're fully
Mhm.
capable and probably more capable than you're willing to give yourself credit for. So take the chance. You'll never regret taking the chance, but you will regret not taking that chance. So do it and lean into that power that we were all given and just do great things.
Well said. I love that. Well, Jessica, it's been amazing having you here on the Simply Smart Business podcast. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe for more inspiring conversations and actionable strategies to help you build a successful and fulfilling business. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.